Hey there guys, and welcome back. So here we are on the GitHub, and as you can see, and if you're watching this live, if you're following this live, we did have a bit of a break in here. I'll talk about this a little bit later in the stream, but suffice it to say that we did not get very much done this session. So let's dive into it. I will go ahead and kick you over to VS Code, and I will stay over here on GitHub myself so I can keep track of the changes. So let's see, GitHub, there it is. Where we started out with, where I started on the last, the first session that happened, what was that, 927, 926. I added in event types because one of those things, changed this to an event listener, add in event types because that's something we do. Registered the event types and worked on all this stuff right here. I'm sorry, I'm over here on GitHub. It's been a while, it's been a week and a half. Let me stop being stupid and actually look at the correct screen. Where is Maps? Maps is not up. We will open Maps. There we go. Alright, so try that again. Event types, event listener, super event types. We've done this several times before on all the other classes. This is just how I'm modeling the code for right now. And from there, we then added all this stuff. So we'll go ahead and run through it. Let's start with the, let's see, where do we start? Actually, let me really quick check the GitHub again. And did I also add, okay, that's funny because I did not add. So evidently we already had moved to home. So we already had moved to home. And the reason I was checking that was because I don't recall seeing us setting up these constants up here. But obviously that happened in a long time ago when we first started on maps, and then I decided, forget maps, we're going to work on the colony first. So we were down here. So this is a very simple distance formula. As you can see, it's just absolute value differences. This is square distances, Manhattan distances to the location. So that just gives us some distance, and then we got the move loop. So obviously this is set up just like everything else. Again, we're going to continue using the coding style that we've been using. That way everything is uniform. So we start out with loop start. We've got a player queue for events that the player has taken, or actions the player has taken rather, which are generated off of keyboard events, for example. And then we trigger event loop end here. Obviously we do not actually go into handle move just yet. I have not implemented that, and I should. I'm going to go ahead and throw in that to-do here, because evidently, move back to, this session was a bit weird. So evidently I did not come back here after things went a bit haywire. So, handle move. Handle move down here, we just look at the symbol in the direction. So, alright, direction is infinity. Basically, if direction ends up being infinity, if we do not actually get a correct direction to move in, then we're going to just return because it's not correct. Again, we could raise errors here, we do not. Otherwise, we come here, well, let me go over this first. You see this q.index of key, less than direction. So we look here, here's a queue, the queue was the player queue, and basically we're going through yeah, okay, so this needs to be positive, it looks like. Again, this has been 2 weeks here, so, and I did not document this for some reason. As you can see, I documented everything else, but not this. I'm guessing, okay, that's what happened here. That's what happened. Move actually comes before handle move, it looks like, or no? No, move is here. Alright, I take it back. I don't know what to tell you. Again, it has been several weeks, and let's see if I can parse this. Q index of key. Key symbol, objects, directions. Directions is, oh, okay. Directions was enumerated. Okay. Right, so I was correct the first time. Let me just comment this. For each direction in valid directions, if we, have a valid direction in the queue, use in the queue, how do I want to say this? Set direction to appropriate value. That's what's going on here. So we have keys and we have symbols, right? Because this is one of our enumerated. So this is one of our enumerated. So we have both the enumerated symbol and the actual text. So we're accepting text and symbols here, which is why we have two different lines here. And we're converting that to the index of that symbol. So for example, north will be 0, east will be 1, south will be 2, and west will be 3. So we're actually just taking those and putting them into a number. That is what's happening here. And then that is that. Again, if we do not have valid direction, we return. And then we move. So we toss the direction into move, and then we're going to get back a direction and a result. So we'll come down here really quick. We're triggering events again at the beginning of here. We have the move start and move end events. So we go ahead and trigger the event to let anybody who's listening know. Again, we can handle responses. We're not doing that just yet from anything that gets the triggered event. You know, for example, canceling the move, etc., etc., etc. So, this is just another catch. So this does not actually matter to us. This one is not necessarily going to come into play because we've already done that up here, but it's there just in case. And then we have our current location, which is the player's location, and we copy that over. You could also do array.from right here. Either one works. And then we got this switch case on directions.north, directions.east, etc., 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 and that modifies the current location. So north, obviously, the y-axis increments by 1. South, the y-axis decrements by 1. Or I got those backwards. 0 is top left. 0 is top left in our situation here. So because 0 is top left, we're decrementing on north and incrementing on south. And then east is right, west is left. Again, top left, so therefore going left would be negative. And then we make sure we haven't moved off the map, as you can see here. So this is just bounding it. So we're within the X coordinate here, and we're within the Y coordinate here. Then update and send off the command. And return true. Return true is not necessarily correct. It doesn't look like. Okay. We will go ahead and fix that. Direction true. And then we're back up to here. And then this is the end move. So the end move does happen after this actual move thing, because once we've moved, then so basically the reason we're doing that is because you see this break right here. So because we have this break right here where we return without doing anything, that's going to mean that our two options was either take this and put this here. We could have done this. So we could have done trigger event here and then trigger event here. Okay? And that would have worked. Or we can just return back and trigger the end move afterwards, after we return from move. Again, two options there. So then if not result, and this actually should say, basically we're unpacking direction here, because we're unpacking direction here, and obviously return here. So actually I should say the other way we can do this, and that's none for reasons that I will get into if you stick around and watch the my catch-up video, my update video, which stream, which will be going up next, 10 o'clock, scheduled 10 o'clock. But suffice it to say, I've been doing a bit of Python, so that's why none came out there. Anyway, here we go. So now we're good. No result would work. That's not something there. And then we subtract off the required fuel and the required repair costs. So fuel would be water, if I recall correctly, and repair cost would be food. Again, assuming I have this remembered correctly. Our allegories for, or rather not allegories, but our what do you call them? I'm blanking on the word I'm looking for. The thing in Dark Room. Oh wow, I can't believe I'm blanking on this word. Anyway, the thing that it corresponds to, the corresponding resources in a dark room. So that is what I got involved into in the first half of the session, in the 926 one, and then I'm pretty sure that's everything. Let me just double check the GitHub. Oh, the only other thing is just a silly little thing over here in demos. I changed this from Start Meeple and Start Meeple Demo, because again, originally I was just going to do Meeples and then it blew up into the whole entire colony demo. I just made that uniform, so I made that to say colony. So that is everything that got done in the first one, in the first half of the session, in the first day. Because, and that only took like half an hour. And what happened here is, let me make sure I have it pulled up and it's displaying correctly. Alright, it is up on my screen, and let's make sure that it's displaying correctly before I hop over here, because sometimes it does not. Okay, it is. Push live. So, I started Googling. I ended up over on this page, and this page has a lot of good information on procedurally generated maps. And this is one of those things I talked about many times before, where I'm going to get to the point where I'm going to probably have to spend a good amount of time researching or doing things that are tedious and do not necessarily have a lot of results immediately. For example, again, the example I keep on giving is CSS. So this is one of those things where about half an hour into the first session, I started reading this. And I read through this whole entire page, and then I also went and skimmed through each of these. And after that, I then kept on Googling, read some more Google stuff on Google, and it was one of those things. The over on the README, I won't switch back just yet, but over on the README, that 1 hour mark was not actually when I was done. I actually just said, okay, you know what, that's been an hour. I'm going to mark it off as an hour, but I'm going to keep on reading stuff. And I've been interested in procedurally generated maps for a while now. I mean, it's an interesting concept. How do you go about that? And I got really into this, and frankly, there is a lot more to consider, and I'm very thankful for this blog website right here, because it's got a lot of information on it. So there you go, Grid Sage Games. Go ahead and Google it if you are also interested. But frankly, that kind of floored me how much I really needed to do in order to implement an actually procedurally generated map. And honestly, when I first Googled, I was just hoping to get a module that I could just plug in. And at the same time, despite saying that, I also kind of wanted to do as much as I could in-house. I haven't been using external modules in the code, because this is kind of a teaching code, and it's kind of a code analysis series. So I wanted to do as much of it by myself by hand, but something like this is just, it would take a long time to implement, and among other things going on last week that kind of drained me. I frankly just needed a break, and that's why we had about 10 days, I guess, between the first hour and the second hour. I just needed a break after everything, you know, not just this, but everything. And I was just plain not in the mood to code. This is probably the first time this has ever happened to me. When it comes to coding, normally I code and I just go. It goes until it's done, and then honestly, my biggest problem is that I don't come back and fix things afterwards. I'll get a working program with some little bugs, and then I won't come back and fix the bugs just because I spent, 100 hours coding, and I was like, you know what? Actually, the other problem that I have is I will decide to fix the bugs by writing a whole new program, by just completely rewriting everything, because, a lot of issues with the program, and they're not necessarily bugs, but they're just inconveniences or lack of functionality in the program. Oftentimes stem from just not good planning, from not knowing what you're getting into before you start. Before you start coding. So one of those things. This is the first time I've actually took a break in the middle of coding, in the middle of writing a program. So that was a bit weird, but obviously we are back now, and we did move on. So second session, again, that actually was just yesterday if you're watching this live. And let me pull GitHub back up. Let's look at what happened otherwise. So first off, we will go back over to map. There we go. And originally this string, map demo actually. Map demo is where I want to be. I take it back. Map demo's not up yet, so map demo. This demo map string, originally I actually had in a JSON file. I deleted it because it was just too tedious and it didn't really make sense. I can just store this map string right here. And this is a good point to jump off on all that stressing that I was talking about with procedurally generated maps. Don't actually apply too much in our situation. So a dark room, I've mentioned this before, and I think I have it notated somewhere in the code. I am not convinced that there's actually any real terrain in a darkroom. I don't think there's any terrain that actually changes how much your movement costs to get over. So there are things that look like mountains, but I'm pretty sure it still just costs you 1 water and 1 food every 2 movement in order to traverse them, which is the same for everything else. So worrying about randomly generated terrain in terms of passageways and routes, corridors, whatever, all of that I was worried about is kind of stupid. It's kind of a waste of time. The other thing is I'm not even sure if a dark room actually has a randomly generated map. Randomly generated maps are a hallmark of LiteLike games, so I was expecting it to, but again, I'm not actually sure they do. They might just have one solid map each and every single time. Again, not 100% sure, but I'm just saying, I may have been doing a lot of worrying for nothing. Regardless, I did go ahead and set up the basic display. So obviously this all is exactly the same as every other demo. We just disable the stuff, clear out the demo box, and then make a new character, make a new map. And then here we take this string and split it into an array. That's how I'm, for the time being, handling the map. I'm splitting into arrays of strings. And when we get back over to map, we'll go ahead and look at what that looks like in code. And then here is, for right now, just a div. I just have a div and I'm just setting, as you can see right here, the text to be the map. So I will go ahead and, well, actually, really quick, we'll run through the rest of it. So we set that up, and then we load the map in. This reload map is whenever the map changes, we can go ahead and do that, and then added in the quit buttons, right? And obviously all this is doing right now is just giving you control back. And I probably should also disable this one, the quit map button. So let's go ahead and do that really quick. Dot disabled true. There we go. And let's go ahead and just take a quick look at what the demo looks like really quick. Do I have LiteLike.html up right now? It does not appear I do. There we go. And let's go live. And hopefully that pops up in the same. It did not. So let me move that over to the window that had Grid Sage Games on it. Again, by all means, check them out if you're interested in procedurally generated maps. As it turns out, we may not be interested in procedurally generated maps. So there we go. That's where we're at right now. We just have this blank field with our guy in the middle. Some things to note. This is a monospaced font, but it's the monospaced font is not square. So while everything does line up, it does not actually have the same spacing here and here. Now, I believe, and it's one of those things I haven't actually checked yet, but this may just be a matter of setting the line spacing. I'm not 100% sure. I just figured, that's probably what it is, and therefore I didn't worry too much about it. And now that I'm saying that, I'm going to just really quick hop in here and see if I can't change line spacing. Let's see. I've got the inspect tool up, the dev tool. Line spacing, or line height rather, not line spacing in HTML, line height. Okay, yeah, 0.5. Okay, so it looks like we can actually get something approximate like this, although this may not, just looking at how it's updating, this may not be the actual correct way of doing it. The other way to do it is just to find a font. I'm only using Courier New right now. We can probably find a font that actually is square to begin with, and then if we need to adjust line height, we can. So that is that, and we can go ahead and swap back over to VS Code. Again, that's all it looks like right now. It doesn't have any movement or anything like that attached to it, so it is just displaying the map. And as mentioned earlier, I will now come down to first off, we got this constant player symbol, just the @ sign as normal. And now, get map. So again, if we had a procedurally generated map, as you can see, map is null here, and the map demo manually sets the map right here, as you saw earlier. Normally, after we get this set up, we would probably want to call, and move to home does not actually modify the map, so we will probably want to call this dot generate map to take this seed and create the map off of it. Again, if it was procedurally generated. I'm not actually sure whether or not we even need this seed at this point, because again, if it's not procedurally generated, then you don't need a seed. You don't need a seed to regenerate the map. But that's what that would look like if we did do that. There we go. Otherwise, down here in get map, this is going to, as you can see, returns the map as an array of strings. And we also have a mask. The mask is your vision. It's what you've uncovered on the map already. And that is the only reason why this is more difficult than it was. And it's one of those things, I would do this differently in Python than this. I use generators and whatnot. But JavaScript, this is how I ended up going about it. So first off, obviously we copied the map. Again, I have array from here. As always, could just be like this instead, right? Does not necessarily matter, either one works. And there's actually, you could probably also slice the map. You could probably do like slice 0 array.length or something like that, I imagine. So anyway, we need to put the player in. After we got the copy of the map, we need to replace whatever is at the point where the player is with the player's icon, because our text map does not have layers, and therefore you can only see the topmost item, which in this case is the player. So for that reason, we're going to go ahead and split the string at this row. So again, we're an array of rows of strings, and if we were an array of arrays, if each row of the map was actually just an array of characters, then we could just grab the index and replace it with player. And that's a consideration. We might consider doing that in the future. But since we're not doing that right now, because it's just straight up a list of strings, an array of strings, we do have to manually recreate the string with the player symbol in it. So we take the string up until, so substring up until the player's location, 0 again being our x coordinate being the index of the row, toss in the player symbol, and then grab the rest of the string after the player symbol. So that's why we have this +1 here, because we don't want to just go to the player symbol and then grab everything after where the player symbol was. That would give us, so our map currently is 21 by 21. Right there, map size 21 by 21. So that would give us a line with 22 items in it. We need to get rid of this one item for the player symbol. If the player symbol was for some reason 2 characters long, then we'd want to do something like player symbol dot length. We'd want to do that, but it is not. It is always 1 character, because that is how roguelike maps work. You only have 1 character to work with, because each character takes up 1 space on the screen. So now we need to implement the mask. If we do not have a mask, we can just return, but implementing the mask. So first off, we're going to have to, and so again, we don't have to, I'm sure there's other ways of doing this, but this is how I ended up doing it, and I would have done this. I would have preferred not to do this in Python, but we're not in Python right now. We're in JavaScript. So we get an iterator, and we're going to iterate over both the map and the mask at the same time. So here's our row right here, and we're splitting our row into an array. Again, we could have done this to begin with. We could have started out and stored the map as an array of arrays of character strings, and this would have then been unnecessary right here, the map.split. And up here, again, we could have just replaced the character at that index. There are certain things it makes easier. However, whenever we output the map at that point, then we actually have to rejoin all those arrays at some point, either before we put them onto the HTML on the front side, or back here before we return it from getMap. So that is the reason why I did not do this, because so basically, if we do not have a mask, then those are extra operations, and we only need to change 1 string. So here we only need to change 1 string if we don't have a mask, and therefore recombining all the other strings that we did not have to take apart to begin with would be extra work. It would be pointless work. Now, most of the time we will be using a mask, so that is not necessarily the case. However, we could also put a check in right here to see if the current row, so let mask array equal mask I. So we could put in a check, and if let's see, what we don't have any in JavaScript. So if sum, actually sum is not a. I am blanking on JavaScript what the sum array JavaScript. I'm totally blanking on how this works in JavaScript, because I am live on stream obviously. Let's see. So it looks like we can use reduce other than iterating. Alright, well, I guess I'll just use reduce. So, no, not that. Mask array dot reduce, or wait, is it not reduce? One second. No, that should be mask array.reduce. I guess VS Code just not realized that I am a B arrow function, A plus B. I believe that's how you write that. Yeah, A plus B. Okay, cool. So, do this. If not, there we go. Continue. So, let's talk about this. So this function right here, this arrow function, just takes 2 numbers. A, I believe, is our running current total, the result from the previous reduce, unless reduce is on its first iteration, or no, actually if it's on its first iteration, it probably starts with 0, I assume, or an empty string. Again, Not entirely sure, honestly, but A, I believe, should be the current running value, and B would be the value we're adding into it, the value at the current array index. And it basically iterates over that and concats / combines / takes the total from this function until it is out of indices. Actually, I believe technically in programming it is technically indexes. I recall looking this up at one point, whether or not it should be indexes or indices, and I believe indices are not correct because indexes, because it uses index because it's not mathematical, it's actually more lookup. It's more like a library index. So anyway, side little tangent there. So at the end of this, if we have all zeros in here, or actually this could be here. Yeah, so if we look right here, right here. So mask is not 0, then add the character to the input. So if it's a 1, that means we've already transversed that cell. We already have vision of that cell, so therefore you can display that cell, that coordinate. Otherwise, leave it in the fog of war. So if everything in this line is 0, it is all fog of war. So we could actually do this. Toss this like this. So if this is that, if everything in here is 0, so 0 plus 0, 0 plus 0 over and over and over again, then at that point we can say out or map I. So we can replace this map row with just a line of strings, a line of spaces. So again, Python, I could just do space times 21 map size. Let's see. Well, for right now, I'm trying to just get this over with really quick because this is an extra little demo. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. And that is column 45. 45 minus 25 is 20. So I guess I counted that wrong because we should be at 46. So there we go. We're at 46 now. We are column 46. So in this case, so if mask array is empty, all zeros, do not show any characters on this row, empty row, and continue. There we go. So in this situation, the way we're doing it right now, we did not have to recombine that array, and else if this is the other reason why we wouldn't need to combine that array. So row mask, row mask, let's see, row mask value is actually what I call it, equals reduce. There we go. Row mask value equals map size. If mask array is all ones, and this is one of those situations where technically speaking, you see how I say is not 0, and in a couple different places I talk about the mask being non-zeros. Really, it should only be 0 or 1s. That's all it really should be. And if a player screws up the map, then we can actually, this is actually hackable right now, but we're going to assume for the moment that they do not screw up the mask. So, for example, if the mask was 21 and then 0, 0, 0, 0 up until index 20, in that case, it would still be 21 is equal to map size, unfortunately. So that's how you'd hack that. But otherwise, this is a fully displayed map row, so we can go ahead and say continue. because everything in this row is displayed. And again, we do not have to recombine this row. We do not have to do row.joined in this case, which is one of the benefits of not using array of arrays of characters and just using arrays of strings, which was the whole entire point of this whole entire 5-minute diversion here, was just to demonstrate the benefits of having arrays of strings as opposed to arrays of arrays. And now that I have this mask array value, which I did not have before, we can go ahead and change that over to mask array X. So, continuing on. So this is in this case, some characters in the array are displayed, and some are not. So that's how we got down here. Now we need to populate a new string to show which ones are displayed and which ones are not. So again, we're going to iterate over, and I wrote this really compact here. It's not great for demonstration points, but I was being lazy. So we're going to iterate over the characters in the map array, as you can see here, and the mask array. And for each character, we're going to AND them together. So if the mask array at this index is 0, this ends up being false. If this ends up being false, this is the else right here after this ternary operator, and that is a space, as you can see. Otherwise, if it is true, if this is a non-zero, again, hopefully it hasn't been hacked, but if it is a non-zero, then the first result in this ternary operation is the map string array, just whatever character is there, because it is displayed. And we are adding that to out, just this compound plus operator right here for the result, either the character at the map string array index or a space. And then finally, again, we were just using pluses, so we don't have to combine anything. We can just set map I to that output. And then finally, at this point, we return map. And that is that. So let me take a quick look back at the GitHub and see if there's anything else I missed. There are a couple little things up at the top. For example, map as null. I didn't actually have the map listed here. I didn't have a saved version of the map, I should say, listed here. In theory, we could regenerate using, again, that generate map function that I talked about before, the map each and every time we need it, but that is a waste of resources. You would more preferably just generate the map once and then save it on this .map. Again, technically exploitable, but it's your fault if you exploit it. And then player location used to be this .player location equals self.moveHome, but as you can see here, we don't actually return anything, and I don't think we really should return anything. So for that reason, I split this up, is null, and then moves home, and it gets set down here inside of move home. Easy enough. And for this page, that's everything we've gone through. Over here, okay, so over in game, we had a new map. So it accepts seed, which again we may not be using, but it is what it is. And if it is not generated already, then we generate a random seed using this .random. And then it also accepts a mask. And we go ahead and return a new map with seed, mask, and this .player, which are obviously what we need here. Again, seed and mask get set. If mask is null, that means that whenever we call, or I should say falsy is what I should say. Falsy undefined, however you want to say that. Then it would end up being none. So yeah, actually, this is what I'm gonna do here, because so we're gonna do this really quick. So if you do not pass in the mask argument, then it's going to be mask equals this dot mask, which makes sense. And then down here, if this dot mask was never defined or is falsy, then we return the mask. There we go. Let's see. What else did we change? I talked about the map demo already, so that's good. We did add a shop cost to something over in items.json at some point. I think I might have done that during the last demo, actually. So that's something we probably already looked at, and I believe that is everything. Again, not as productive as a session as we normally did for obvious reasons. Again, I've already explained it. So, with all the little code edits for demonstration purposes, we ran a little bit longer than I normally do, despite the fact that this was a much smaller update to the code than previously. So, we definitely padded it out and made up for it. And let's see, yeah, I think that's everything. So, things I need to do before we kind of move forward with the map. So at this point, we can display the map as I've stated. We do have ways to move the character around the map already built into the back end. So map demo is just going to have to implement input on the front end. So the front end will get the input, pass it over to the back end, and create the loop, the move loop. So right here, loop ID, set loop ID, start the move loop. And at that point, we'll be able to move around. And at that point, we can start doing things like putting cities in this map and possibly creating random encounters. Now, creating random encounters does cause us to have to implement into this demo combat as well. So whether or not I actually do that, I do not know. We may just implement cities and houses, or the equivalent, our equivalents of cities and houses from a dark room. We'll see what we want to do there. I'm not entirely sure how in-depth I want to make this demo, so that may not happen. We may not do combat in the map demo. Otherwise, I do need to definitely figure out whether or not the map is going to be identical each and every single time, or if it's going to be randomly generated. And we need to figure out a way to do that if we do. If we do have random generation in the map, for example, even if the terrain itself is the same each and every single time, we could also consider randomly generating locations. We'll see what happens. Those are things I got to figure out before the next session, before I even start coding, honestly. I should figure that out. Although, again, as I've said before, figuring out how your code is going to work is kind of the same thing as coding, and therefore, in theory, maybe should be part of the session. We'll see what happens. So, that was everything for today. Again, if you are watching this in real time, I will be chatting some more after this. Otherwise, I, again, do not include much more than that in these videos, because this is supposed to be solely about LiteLike, so LiteLike development. So, if you have been watching, thank you. And as always, I hope you have a grand and wonderful day, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And I will catch you next time.